What's up, and welcome back to the Alpha Girl Confidence Podcast. This is episode 207, and I'm your host, Shay Haddo. Super excited to share this episode with you, where I sat down with friend and San Francisco Giants assistant coach, Alyssa Nakken. So if you don't know, if you haven't heard, Alyssa Nakken is the first full-time female coach in MLB history. And back in April of 2022, she was the first female coach to take the field. So if you didn't know, she's a pretty big deal, but also one of the most humble and grounded people that I've ever met in my life. And I really think you're going to enjoy this episode where we talked about her journey from playing softball at Sac State to being an intern for the Giants to now being an assistant coach for the Giants, how it is being the only woman on an all-male coaching staff. We also talked about how she gains respect of her other staff members, but also her players. And then we talked about how confidence has played a role in her as a coach, how she helps players through slumps, and also how she stays grounded with traveling so much and dealing with the media. So we dove into so much awesome stuff that I know any parent, player, or coach is going to love. If you're a sports fan, if you love seeing women break barriers, then please check out this full episode. It's such a fun one for me to record, and I can't wait for you to dive in. And if you like it, please make sure to, number one, share it. Let's get this out there because there's so many awesome gems in this episode. And number two, leave a review on Spotify or iTunes if you haven't already. It's been a minute since we've been on the podcast with our break. So please, I would really appreciate if you take just a second to leave a review. All right. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Nakken, what's up? Welcome to the Alpha Girl Confidence Podcast. As we were saying, you were my first guest back for a long time, so we'll see if we can dust off some rust here, but excited to have you on.
I'm so excited to be here, and I love what you're doing for the youth and just women in general, and I love you and your lovely wife, so I'm so jazzed to be here with you.
Yeah, you were like a big motivation for me, like getting back on the podcast horse, because I was talking to Jill and I was like, I really want to interview Nakken and have her on. And so I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's get it done. So I'm glad we were able to coordinate it at dinner a couple months ago. So
yes, so fun.
Beautiful. So for those people that are living under a rock and don't know who Alyssa Nakken is, share a little bit about your kind of athletic background, softball, and then kind of about your role currently, and then we'll kind of just dive in from there.
Cool. So I grew up in Woodland, California, right outside of Sacramento, and played a lot of youth sports, volleyball, basketball, soccer, softball, and a lot of those sports I played with Jill, and just loved like learning how to be an athlete and learning like the life skills that you get from working with teams and people that come from different backgrounds than you and different types of coaches. And at a young age, I just like really understood started to understand the power that sport had. Yeah. Plus I was somebody that had a lot of energy and I just needed to be like running around. And in high school, just played as many sports as I could. At a fairly young age, I knew like softball was the sport I wanted to go on and play as long as I could. And for females playing softball, there's not too much beyond college. There is a pro league now. Softball was in the Olympics, taken out of the Olympics, back in the Olympics. Mm-hmm. But my goal was to just play softball at a D1 school, and that's kind of where my dreams sort of stopped. Mm-hmm. And growing up and in high school specifically, like I had girlfriends that knew like they wanted to go on and become a pharmacist or a doctor or a teacher. And I was like, I want to play D1 softball. And I thought like, that's life. And then my male classmates would be like, I want to play professional baseball. And for them, they got to dream of like having a family and being in their 30s and playing this sport still and getting paid money. And that was their life. And for me, it was like, okay, just go to college and So I did. I fulfilled that dream, but then I graduated and had no idea what the future held. So
Right.
I think you've probably gone through this. Other athletes go through this. You go through an identity crisis.
Absolutely.
And, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I mean, to this day, I'm always reevaluating what my values are and how I want to spend my time. But I knew that sports played a huge role in my youth and in college. So the University of San Francisco has a very well-respected graduate program. It's a sport management program. And I applied there, got in, and immediately went to the baseball team. They didn't have a softball team, which I think like in hindsight was kind of good because it allowed me to expand and open up to baseball. And started working there, getting paid zero money. They said like right away, they're like, we can't pay you, but we need a lot of help. So are you in? I was like, yeah, I'm in.
Totally.
And that's when I started to fall in love with baseball from like a coaching perspective. I was definitely knew that I was done with playing, but wanted to be around the game, and started to just see some of the best coaches in the game do what they were doing and learn from them. And I wanted to pursue that, but I didn't see any opportunities to beyond the comfort of USF.
Right.
And then I got an internship with the Giants in 2014. And over the last, for 6 years was in different roles within the front office and learning about the game. And in late 2019, our president of baseball ops hired a new manager, Gabe Kapler, and he's a manager that's all about surrounding himself with people that look different than him, have a different upbringing, and can bring diversity of thought to the clubhouse. So he hired a coaching staff that is very diverse and one that no team had ever really done before. And part of it was hiring a woman to be a coach. So I was hired as an assistant coach in early 2020 and getting ready for my 4th season in that role.
4th season. I can't believe it's already been that long.
Oh, isn't that wild?
Wow.
It's like going into my senior year.
Right. I know, that's so crazy. So when you started with the Giants, what was, because I don't really know a lot about what your, I guess, roles have been. What was your role when you initially got hired on full-time as a coach? And how has that evolved over the last 4 years?
Yeah. So when I was first hired in 2014 as an intern, and it was in baseball operations. So it was just kind of a lot of admin stuff, a lot of scouting, a lot of assisting with player development. Then I went kind of on the business side of the organization for a bit to get some experience there, which was really awesome. But I missed being on the field. I missed working with players.
Yeah.
So when I was hired in 2020, so my role, I was an assistant coach when I first got hired in 20, and then my role is still assistant coach. But I think with anything, right, the more reps you get, the more years you put in, the more time you spend doing something, you naturally are growing and evolving. So naturally your responsibilities grow and shift and change. And when I was hired, our whole staff was new as well. So, and we were all very young. So I think just the biggest thing has been learning how to work, how each other works, and how to continue to help prepare our players to perform at their highest level every single night. So yeah, it's been quite the ride.
Yeah, and this is a question I'm sure other people will be interested to hear it too, but I am personally really interested in hearing you were talking about even just this, last week or a couple weeks ago at the convention in Nashville, how there was thousands of coaches there, and what you said 4 were females.
I think there were 4 women walking around.
What is that like? Just I guess in that experience, but also just being the only female on an all-male coaching staff. What is that like from a leadership perspective? And also, I don't know if this is the right word, but I guess gaining the respect of your coworkers and also like your players, I guess? Like, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. To touch on like the coaching convention that took place last week, 8,500 coaches. So it's pro, youth, high school, college. And I think there were like 4 females amongst that whole group. Yeah.
Wow. That's especially crazy that it was like youth too. You would think there would be a little bit more since there was the youth sprinkled in there.
Yeah. And there might have been, I mean, that was literally just like me looking and seeing like, okay, around like
we'll go with 4.
Yeah, we'll go with 4. So that is its own monster, but I can like definitely speak to, my experience in being the only female coach in the clubhouse. And one thing to note is that there are quite a lot of women that do work in baseball. So our dietitian is female, our director of EAP, which is Employee Assistance Program, like psychology, she's female, some female medical staff. So one, that's kind of helpful because in our locker room, like there's other people to talk to.
Right.
But I think like going into it, I've never been uncomfortable being an only girl or one of few women in a situation. I think a lot of it has to do with I have 2 older brothers who are like 6 years and 9 years older. And so I was constantly around them and then their friends. So, that's like a pretty big age gap, when you're like 6 and then you're hanging out with like 12 or 15-year-olds. I just kind of learned how to get comfortable in that space. And then surfing, I think, has actually really helped too, because there's not a ton of women out there like charging the waves. And, you just kind of like learn how to navigate. And I feel like surfers are very territorial. I think, anybody that's been in baseball or knows about baseball, certainly coaches and people in baseball can be very territorial. So I think just life experience has helped me gain confidence to know that I deserve respect, because I know I'm going to give respect in whatever room I walk into. And I think like the hardest, not that it was hard, it was just like the loudest voices were like the media, right? The media attention. It was just like female coach, only girl in the locker room. Where's she going to change? All these stories.
All that stuff. You're just like,
right? That like, sure, I understand. And, but like inside of our clubhouse, inside of our unit, like, it doesn't feel weird. The guys just kind of like treat me like they would any other coach. And I really honestly never felt more respected than I have in this clubhouse for the last 4 years.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And it's great because, these guys, they have daughters, they have sisters, they have good relationships with their mothers, they have wives, like they know how to respect women. But it was like just kind of the outside society thing. But I think one thing that I went into 2020, like, okay, I don't want it to be about me. I'm going to like kind of just fly through everything. I don't want to make anything like hard for anybody, don't want to make like the clubhouse staff have to do too much extra for me.
Right.
All of this. And what I learned and my mindset was like, it was coming from a good place. It was just like, I want to fit in. I want to not stand out. And I want to not create chaos for anybody else. But actually that kind of is like the wrong thing to do because I wasn't thinking beyond me. And so I wasn't thinking about how can I help be a part of the solution to make it more comfortable for women, maybe who haven't had the upbringing that I did, where you were just around guys all the time, to come in. So as our clubhouse has evolved and there are more women in our clubhouse, they kind of brought it to me like, oh, this isn't right, or this isn't good. We need this. And then being around, other women in the game from other teams and hearing their stories, it's like, oh, I need to step up and do a lot more, make it not about me, and like help pave paths to make it more easy and conducive for women to come in, feel comfortable to go to work every single day, and to help them earn and gain the respect.
I think that's huge because like as girls, I think society has taught us to kind of stay out of the way, don't cause trouble, don't demand too much, like, that kind of thing, just kind of make things easy in a sense, right?
For sure.
I love that you looked at that as like, oh, I'm making this about me, but by looking bigger at the bigger picture, like, this isn't about me. This is so that I can pave the way for other people. I think that's huge, because you are paving the way for so many people. And like going back to the media thing, like I feel like you are probably the most humble person on the planet. And of course you get a lot of media because, first full-time female coach and first female coach to take the field and like all of that stuff. How has like handling the media been? Because like, if you Google you see you everywhere, but like you yourself, you're just Alyssa and you haven't changed and you're not going to change because of the media. So I would love to hear a little bit about like how that experience with the media has been.
Yeah, right away it was like it went through this very like big wave. When I was interviewing for the role, like the concept of my gender never came up. It was like Cap was just trying to hire really good people to fit his staff.
Right.
And I didn't really even know, like, no woman had done it before. And so it was like, I never thought of it. And I'll never forget, because I got the offer, a week or two before it was announced. So I was like getting into the rhythm, getting to know the coaching staff, making trips down to Scottsdale to meet and work with players. Yeah. And I remember one night I was about to board a flight and our like director of communications called and was like, all right, we're making the announcement tomorrow. And I realized like I haven't really checked in on you. Like, how are you doing? You okay? I was like, yeah. She's like, okay, how are your parents doing? Like, are they ready? I was like, yeah, I think they're getting ready to plan a trip to spring training, probably March-ish. And she's like, oh, no, I meant like, I think your name's going to be in the news tomorrow. And I said, okay, I'll keep a lookout. Like, that's cool. And then like 12 p.m. the next day, I'm in Scottsdale, like in and out of the cage. And then my phone just like will not stop lighting up to the point where it shuts down. Oh, and then, cool. It's like all over the TVs and I'm still trying to like meet all of the players and the staff. And it's like, wow. Oh yeah, this is like historical. Makes sense. I get it. And I think like that moment was really helpful because all around me, like the TVs, it was this announcement and my face and my parents started to get interviewed and like all this stuff. And my phone was like blowing up. But then I realized like I could just flip the phone over and not see it and be like very present with the staff. I could change the channel. And I think that really like helped set the tone. But then once like media day started to roll around, Fan Fest, I went through a media training and I like had to walk out. I was so overwhelmed like from the training, but then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I got this. Like I can handle this. And something that Cap said, which like Gabe Kapler, our manager, which I think is like truly like true empowerment was, Nak, just be yourself and we all benefit. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Because part of me was like, oh, I need to put on this front that I know everything. And like, this was the dream from like the day I was born, And it's like, no, I'm just going to tell my story. That's all I know. And talk about how I can help this team. And I think the Giants have a really like respectful media team who I've known for a long time from being with the organization. So they know my personality. They know like, all right, like let's limit the amount of like requests that come through. So it's been a total team effort. And I think I just know myself. I feel like I'm really grounded. So when something doesn't feel right, I'll say no. And I feel very confident in saying no. But then I also understand, like, I never knew this job could be an opportunity for me because I never saw a female doing it.
Right.
And so now I understand, okay, well, it's, again, like I have to stop thinking about me and thinking about others and like probably get out there a little bit more to show some face. Right. So that this type of thing just kind of spreads.
Yeah, that's interesting because like you naturally, it's not like you want to have all the media appearances. Like you don't, that's not you. But then part of you is like, okay, well maybe a little bit so that other girls can see like, hey, it's possible. So again, there's like that balance that where it's bigger than you. So that's
Exactly.
yeah. And there's so many good things there. A couple of things you said is like the words that stood out to me was like grounded, which that's I think an excellent word to describe you. And then also confidence. And I think you have this quiet confidence about you, where it's like you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You're just you, and you just show up as you, and you do an amazing job, and that's good enough. And so I would love to hear kind of obviously like confidence is a big thing that we talk about. So for you, how important has confidence in yourself been as you've kind of evolved in this role and as just kind of like how you show up for your players and your staff?
It's something I have to consciously think about every single day in the season and in the off season.
Yeah.
'Cause I think just like naturally, like I don't know if I'm a very confident person, like in a lot of things, but I am confident in knowing like, is this the right move for me? Is this a healthy decision for me in this moment? Is this person a good person to hang around? You know, so I definitely am not somebody that's like gets peer pressured easily. I like growing up, I never was. But I do think there was a lot of pressure, especially once it was like clear I wanted to go and play D1 softball. There was like a lot of pressure from like outside coaches and other, just like the youth space can get kind of funky and hairy when like there's some talent there and they want to go far, but also just, you know, so that kind of got weird. I think I'm still working through some of that. I had a great experience and wouldn't change it for a thing. But then as I get older and I reflect back, I'm like, oh, there was some hairy things going on with, just some coaches and other influences that I think hindered the confidence I had to where I just like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough to play D1. Maybe I'm not good enough to play in a team that's going to be on TV. And, you know, a lot of that was internal too, you know, 14-year-old girls, it's really hard to like find the confidence. But now it's like, okay, I go through waves of like, I can do this and, you know, I can be as good as I can be. But then there are moments where it's like, oh man, I am in way over my head. And I think what's really helped in just sustaining a confidence, and I think you worded it perfectly. I think it's beautiful, like a quiet confidence, has been giving myself enough grace to know like, confidence doesn't mean you have to be perfect at everything or have to have the right answer or, you know, make the right move every single time. Confidence, I think, is like coupled with feeling okay to be vulnerable in situations.
Absolutely.
And be able to say like, oh, I don't know this, but I know the right person, or I know somebody who can help me with this. And I think in professional sports, the moment somebody says, oh, I don't know, it's like they are discredited, like they're not good enough, blah, blah, blah. I think we're starting to see a shift in that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think our clubhouse and the way like Cap has kind of his leadership style is all about like vulnerability loops. Like if coaches can be vulnerable, it's going to allow the players to feel like they can truly show up to our clubhouse feeling like they can be themselves, and then like vice versa. And I think like in that same breath, like just the network I'm around in the clubhouse, but also like family, friends, like I feel so supported. And so that helps give me confidence. But I mean, there are days where I'm like, even in the off season, in the fetal position, crying, like, I can't do it. I'm not good enough, you know? And then it's like, okay, it's like stand up, get out there. And it's like one step at a time. And that's been like how I think I've been able to sustain some confidence.
That's like one of the best definitions I've ever heard of confidence in my life, I would say. Because it's like, I think so often confidence, people think like, oh, confidence is just knowing that you can do something. But like, I like to say more so it's like, no, it's just having the confidence to try something and like being okay with failing. And when you said vulnerability, it's like, if someone like has like this confident, like a fake confidence about them, they're going to have like this shell, right? Where they're not going to be vulnerable because deep down they don't really feel confident. But if like you're really confident in yourself, you're okay with like things not going wrong or not knowing the answer, and you're able to be more vulnerable. So I think that's such a much better, wholesome way to look at confidence, and like a healthier way to look at confidence, because it's like no one's confident all the time, and if they are, I guarantee you that's fake confidence. You know? And then like the doubt piece, like nobody, like even the best athletes in the world, the best coaches in the world, doubt is always going to arise. But it's just like what you said, you were in the fetal position, you're crying. Like, yeah, we all go through that. I've gone through that a million times this last year, right? But it's not letting that doubt stop you that's important. So like that was just absolute gold that I really hope that everyone listening, parents, coaches, girls, can take, that like being confident is just like, it's like giving yourself the grace to like not know everything all the time and screw up and like not have everything perfect. Like that's amazing. So I love that.
Thank you.
Beautiful. I want to get to like we were talking about being grounded, right? Again, which I think is this whole thing of confidence. What helps you today? And I know we talked about surfing a little bit, but like what helps you to like stay grounded, and also like grounded? What does that even mean to you? Like when you say I want to be grounded, or I am grounded, or I need to get grounded, like what does that even mean to you?
Grounded to me means like I feel good, and good can be like I feel strong, I feel confident, I feel ready, I feel prepared, even when like shit is hitting the fan. Okay. That's when I know. And like I think all of us have been affected in different ways, in stronger ways, some than others, these last few years with the global pandemic and just like a lot going on in the world. And I think it's so easy, and you can see it in people. It's like they're trying to keep up with everything. They're trying to like be the healer for everybody, but like they're not really like, wait a minute, let me just take care of myself. So grounded to me is like feeling strong in the moment and being like very aware of my surroundings in the moment. And the way that helps, and it's tough, right? Like a major league season, we play 162 games in just the regular season. So then you could potentially be playing an additional month of baseball, hopefully, if you make the playoffs. So it's a lot, and you're traveling to all different time zones, and then you add on just like the intensity of, you know, needing to perform at a high level. And so it's very easy to get whatever the opposite of grounded is. Yeah,
like flighted. I don't know. Flighted is the first word.
Flighted. You're just in the air. And so it comes down to just like, okay, how can I simplify everything I have control of in my life? So like for me, I need to make sure I'm taking care of myself. Like if I don't sleep well, I'm not the best wife. I'm not the best, you know, coach. I'm certainly just like not the best Alyssa. If I'm not eating well, I just feel icky. If I'm not like fueling my body with like good things or moving it in ways that are nourishing, then I know that I'm not going to be my best. And in my position now, and like, and for anybody, right, in whatever position you're in and just in life in general, why would you settle for going a day without being at your best? And sure, there are days where you need to like allow yourself to lay on the couch and all of that. Right. But like for me, in order to bring myself back to like being centered, being grounded, I need to move my body, I need to nourish it, and I need to like fill my cup with good energy, like people, and check in with family and all of that. And to me, that just seems like so simple. We talk a lot in our clubhouse about how baseball and just like this industry is like taking us away from nature. Sure, we're like an outdoor sport and all of that, but like we're in the plane a lot, we're in the clubhouse a lot, we're our circadian rhythms are all off because we're supposed to be performing starting at 7 p.m. at night through 11 p.m. and then try to go to sleep and then wake up. But so it's crazy. So, and I feel like society is trying to take us away from nature. Like you can get the dopamine hit all just from sitting on your couch. You can get the good vibes from like somebody liking something. You can get your food delivered straight to your door. And so that's like, sure, some people are like, well, that's simple. That's it. But like, that's not what the human body is supposed to be doing. Of course, some days, yes. But for me, it's like literally, if I go outside, if I get in the ocean, I know I'm going to have a good day. And because I feel like centered, and sure, there's going to be like bad things that happen, uncontrollable things that can happen. But I know that I'm now prepared to go into those situations with as clear a mind as I was able to control.
I love that you talked about this, because like going into kind of this new phase of alpha girl confidence in my business, it's like mine's like the tenets are like mindset, movement, nature, and service. Like those are the things. Like in the past, it's just been all mindset, but it's like, what are my values? Like those are my values. I know that those things are necessary for a healthy, robust, thriving life. And so like movement, obviously kids get a lot of that, but it's like organized movement. Like, can we get back to like our just natural movement? And then nature is like a huge one. Like kids, they go to school for 7 hours, and then they go to practice. Sometimes it's outside, sometimes it's inside. But like, that's one of the biggest things that the kids struggle so much with, anxiety these days, right? Like that's through the roof. And like, if they were just to go outside, go for a walk around their house, go play in the dirt, go climb a tree, do something like that's going to work better than any therapy session or pill. Yes. So like, I love that you brought up the nature aspect of it, because that, in my opinion, is one of the biggest things missing from our lives in general, but especially from like kids' lives these days. For sure. Those are beautiful pillars to have in your business. I'm stoked about it. Game changing. And it's so true. Like, I think, I have friends that have kids, and I just see how much like, they're on screens and inside, and it's like, what happened to the days where like you can just like get outside or get like your feet literally in the ground? And that's what we do with our players. We get them out in the outfield, and we walk barefoot on the grass just to start to try to like regulate their system back to whatever like time zone we're in, and all of that. That's huge. So if you're listening, pro baseball players get grounded by, like, I do that too when I travel, take my shoes off, put them in the grass, the dirt, the sand, like whatever it is, just to kind of like get it. Really, for me, it's like getting out of your head, which is where we live so much of the time, getting out of your head and getting back into your body, and getting back into like feeling your body. And I think that's where confidence comes from. And that's where like obviously where the groundedness comes from too. Totally. And on the play factor, I'm sure you experienced it just last week when you tried surfing for the first time. Like you have to be so humble when you're in the ocean, because you are definitely not in control. Like all you can control is just yourself. And I think also like, so there's so many lessons in that, which we can totally riff on. But I'm actually doing an episode about all the lessons I learned from surfing. Like I don't know if that'll go before or after this, but it's going to be one of the episodes. I can't wait to hear that. So many lessons. And you add on just like the playful factor, being in a warm ocean, like with your loved ones around, learning something new, challenging yourself, but also it's just like so fun. It's playful and you get to play. And I think adults need to find that a little bit more. Yeah. And well, like, here's the thing is that if a parent isn't playful and isn't doing these things, how can they expect their child to do that? Right? Like it all starts with the parent. So if the parent wants them to be more active or eat better or be more confident or whatever it is, like what are you doing as the parent, and bringing back play into like your family and your culture of your family, I think is one of the most important things that a family could do today. That's very true. Yeah. Like leading by example. Yeah. So with that, because there are some parents obviously listening, what role, and I think Jill told me like a little bit about your parents, but doesn't really know. So I don't really know, like, what role did your parents play? Like, were they hang back, like super supportive, or were they kind of like too involved kind of throughout your career? Tell me a little bit about their role.
It was a healthy mix of both, I think.
Yeah.
I think first off, though, like they instilled this like knowledge within myself that I could do anything that I would want to if I went about it the right way and worked really hard. Mm-hmm. So I think like, you know, for me, I was never one that when I would look at job descriptions, right, it's like, okay, this is the only thing I can do, right? I was always like, okay, what else can I do? Or I never want like a company's like job postings to limit me to the impact that I could have in that community or in that organization. Sure. And I think that came from my parents because they never like put me in a box, like you need to be this and not do this. It was more of like, okay, like we're going to sign you up for things because we want you to try things and be around different people. I think also like when I was like 6 or 7, they were like, okay, you've been hanging around boys a lot because of my brothers. They were like, we need to like get you around more girls. Mm-hmm. So that's when I started softball and, you know, like girls basketball and girls soccer. But they never like forced me to choose between a sport. And at the youth level, you know, and into high school, I felt like there was a lot of pressure on some of my teammates to pick a sport and like become a specialist. And that just scared me because I was like, I really like basketball and I really want to keep playing. And and I think I'm so grateful that my parents like, they were just very honest all of the time. Like they would tell me, if you quit basketball, that would free you up to go to more pitching lessons in the months of November, December, and January. Right. But like, that's all they would say. It wasn't like, you should quit basketball. For sure. It's more of like, if you keep playing basketball, you get to wear the Woodland High uniform, you get to play a sport you love, and you get to work out muscles that you're not working out when you're training for softball. So you're likely to become a more well-rounded athlete. So it's just like conversations like that, like, here are the options, let's talk through them. But they had, for at least what I remember, they had no bias in what I did. Right. And I think that was really freeing because I had friends and teammates that I just saw their dynamics with their parents, and it was just not that. My mom was one that was definitely like, I'm going to cheer you on. You can do anything you want. Like, you're the best, you know? And my dad was like, that girl seems like she's more of like an entertaining ball player than you are. And I was like, challenge accepted, you know? So I think like and this sounds bad, but it was like, I never felt good enough to my dad, but I felt like way too good to my mom. So it was like,
there's a balance,
dynamic and balance. And we talk through it now as adults, and I've, you know, talked through it with other people. And it's just fun to like look back on, but they really just, I think it was just that freeing feeling that they gave me. And I was able to just be Alyssa. Like, I never remember feeling like, I have to do this because my parents want me to. Sure, there are days where like, I don't want to go to practice. Right. To lessons. Sure. And again, it would just, they would be honest. Like, if you don't go to this practice, you miss out on this training. And it's like, okay, I'm convinced. But they're my biggest supporters. I mean, they come on a couple road trips a season here, and the team loves them. My mom will like hug the players in the elevator at times, and they're awesome, and I love going home to them and seeing them. And that's so cool. We were watching the Richard Branson documentary the other day, and the question to him was like, what do you consider success? And he said, I'm going to butcher it, but basically like, create a life in a space that where your kids want to come back and visit. And I was like, it's right around the holiday times, right? When I get back home, and it's like, wow, this is so cool. Like, I feel very, very grateful for the impact and influence my parents have had on me and continue to have on me.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. I think the two big things, it sounds like that they gave you autonomy to make your own decisions, right? Like they gave you the facts, like, hey, if you miss training, maybe you're going to sit, maybe you're not going to get much playing time, but hey, it's your choice. And like with choosing your sports, because for me, like I had to choose, and I wish that I wouldn't have had to choose. I chose soccer over basketball when I was a freshman, and I look back and I'm like, man, I wish I would have been able to play basketball in high school. Like I think that would have been so much fun. So I think autonomy is huge, that parents need to give their kids autonomy, and also communication. Like it seems so simple, but it's like parents will come to me sometimes and be like, hey, what should I do with my daughter? Should I blah, blah? And I'm like, I don't know, have you asked her? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So just like having an open line of communication to see, like, does your daughter still like her sport? Does she want to go to practice? Does she need a break? Is she burnt out? Like, does she want you to talk to the game about the game before and after? And that kind of stuff is just like, that was the thing that was missing with my relationship with my dad, and which was why it was so tension filled, is just because we didn't communicate, because I was like, I was too scared about like, what was he going to say? So that's really cool that there was that balance, but those two kind of big pillars that allowed you to just really be yourself, which in my opinion is the most important thing.
Yeah, totally. And I think like communication, it is not easy, you know, like having uncomfortable, some of those conversations are uncomfortable, even though like on paper, it's like, you're just asking like why she doesn't want to go to practice, you know, but like they can turn into uncomfortable conversations. And I think, you know, I'm not a parent, but I just see some, like my husband runs a youth organization, and some of like the insight I've gotten into some of those conversations and dynamics, it's like, whoa, I feel like these parents are trying to kind of like live through their children.
Yes, absolutely.
And, you know, maybe there's some insecurities there that haven't been like discussed or really thought through. And they're trying to make sure, like they want to, it's all coming from like a great place in the heart. Like they want to give their kids what they didn't have, you know, but sometimes like the best advice is like, get out of your own way and get out of your kids' way and like, just keep going.
Yeah, I think that is like, I talk about that a lot with parents, in maybe different ways, but yeah, it's like a lot of times, like my dad absolutely was trying to live through me. And even though it was coming from a good place and good intentions, I think a lot of people just aren't, or a lot of parents, I should say, just aren't maybe self-aware enough all the time. And we all need to work on that. So I'm not calling anyone out, but just aren't self-aware enough to see like, why am I driving my kid to do this? Is it truly for them in their best interest? Or is it because I want people to view them and view me a certain way, which happens a lot, unfortunately. But that's human nature, right?
It's human nature for sure. And it's in coaching too, right? It's like, I know this player can like break through if he's just does this, but it's not that easy. There is like a lot of gray area. So you kind of have to meet the player, or you meet the child like where they're at, and asking questions is a great place to start.
Yeah. A question just came to my mind, kind of like around a bit of a different topic, but like when you're coaching, I'm sure like in baseball, especially, like players get into slumps, right? And in every sport, but like baseball is a game of failure, and I'm sure slumps happen a lot. So for you as a coach, like, have you seen that often? And if so, like, how do you help a player navigate that?
Yeah, we definitely see it often. And sometimes like a slump could be happening when nobody really else knows, right? Like the stat line isn't necessarily saying this player's in the slump, but like the player just feels off. And then of course you have the slumps where like, yeah, I'm 0 for 27, you know, like this stuff. And I think like very early on, and even when I was a player, I would see coaches do this, or even like I would try to help teammates, right? It's like, okay, let's throw a lot at this player and like get them to try this and this and this. Okay, let's shift the mindset. Let's think about this, this. But in the last, like specifically like the last like 4 years, I've really seen the value of taking a step back, kind of like getting just a little bit quieter, asking some questions, and then allowing the player to kind of talk through what it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is like a physical thing, like they're just feeling like, or they're not feeling like their swing like they felt it 2 weeks ago. And then other times it's stuff that's going on in their head. They just had a kid, their sleep is off, you know, they're worried about like their next contract, that sort of stuff. And I think like, again, being just kind of like an observer and a supporter in those situations really goes a long way. One thing that I have seen and works, you know, is really beneficial is finding maybe one tweak to the routine. Like if there is a player that is going through a pretty like dark time on the field, it's like, okay, can we shift the routine? Whether it's like the timing of it, like, you know, when you're getting in the cage, like maybe get in a little bit later or get in a little bit earlier, or it's like shifting back to becoming more intentional with like the prep work, like the T drills, the one arm drills, the flip drills, as opposed to like going through the motions, like maybe they typically do like mid-season, right? It's like, okay, I have my routine, I get into it, but then they've kind of lost the intentionality behind some of those drills. So that's something we always like when we're seeing like the struggle come through, it's like, okay, where can we make a shift, very slight shift to kind of just like rebalance or kind of like ignite something new into that player. But I think what doesn't work is like, all hands on deck, let's do this. You know?
And I think too, for let's say a teenage girl who's going through that, I think throwing everything at them and making it this huge deal reinforces in their mind that there's something wrong with me. And then it's just this self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think, I love that you said, like, let's see if we can make one simple tweak, one shift, and like go with it, see what happens. Okay, if that doesn't work, let's make another simple tweak. But it's not like, it's number one, coming from a place of like listening and what's actually going on in their life. But number two, also just like, let's just start with one thing instead of throwing the whole kitchen at them.
Yes. And I think that's where, like, depending on how big a coaching staff is with whatever sport it is, there's a lot of voices, and adding in like the parents or the friends or other coaches, you know, like a lot of voices. So it's like, as a player, as an athlete, learning how to filter, you know, a lot of that noise is a skill, I think, and it's something that you learn to develop, and it's not going to happen when you're 13 years old. It's going to continue to like be something that you have to be consciously aware of, and that's taking ownership in your own development as an athlete and just in life too. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so one last big question. You ready for it? I'm so ready. Also, I just saw my photo that you had like put my name. Did you see this? Are you seeing? I just saw it. It just like showed up. That photo across over your shoulder? No, it's like sorry, it's where it says like echo cancellation. It's like Alyssa Nakken guest, and then like my little headshot, and it's me like. I think it's right when I saw you. But sorry. Oh, that's funny. Okay, no, I cut that out. Okay, no, I actually don't see that. I only see an A. Oh, weird. Okay, I want to see that picture because that was such an exciting picture. Yeah. So, okay, last big question. We're not editing that out. I don't like editing out because it just whatever happens. What advice? So obviously you've broken some pretty major barriers, you know, in the sports world for women. What advice would you give to a girl, I don't know, a teenage girl who, you know, wants to do something off the cuff, do something that's different from what society tells her to do? What advice would you give her? Ooh, I would, there's a lot, and it seems so simple. Simple is always the answer, though. Which is like so encouraging. There's a Roomba right here. Sorry if it's loud. I think, especially teenage years, find your routine. And by that, like, I literally mean like, a morning, afternoon, like even like a daily routine. And so this was advice that I got when I was a teenager, and so I did it. I had a routine. But then it was so detrimental because the moment my routine got shaken up, whether it was a schedule change or I got sick or I just didn't want to get up and like go walking or running, then I got really down on myself and was like very hard on myself to where it was like, this sucks. Like, I'm not happy with myself. So it's like a work in progress always, but allowing yourself to have a work in progress routine, but be very intentional about the understanding of the importance of developing a routine.
Yeah.
So like, I think it's so easy for all of us to wake up, we get on our phones, we're scrolling social media. Oh my gosh, my friend is doing this. I'm not good enough. They're already doing this. They're only 17 and they started like a side business. What? And that comparison is just like not healthy. So I think like if this girl has it in mind, like wants to do something that's off the cuff that society is not encouraging her to do, like write a pen to paper, write it out, keep writing it out to where it's like, because when it's on the paper and you're looking at it every single day, you're thinking about it every single day. It's very weird and very cool how like as you go through life, you'll start to see where the little windows of opportunity start to appear that you can kind of shift your current path, start to head that way. And it's all little like micro moments that lead to the big life change. Like, to the world, it seemed like, okay, snap the fingers. A woman broke through barriers, but it's like, no, I was just like every day, very intentional with how I wanted to spend my day. I was very intentional with like the people I wanted to surround myself with. And ultimately I needed to be taking care of myself, like my health and just like my physical being, so that I could feel really good to be more like active and engaged every single day. So
I love that.
Develop a routine, but give yourself grace. We've already like used that term, I feel like, but like to where if it's shaken up, you're still stable and you're still steady in it.
I love that. And like for you, you probably didn't think that you were going to get to where you were, how you got there. Like you couldn't have imagined that. No. So I love how you said like the micro moments, like those little opportunities, and just be open and be like water, right? Who said that? Bruce Lee? Is it Bruce Lee?
Yes, I think so.
Bruce Lee. Be like water, and just like life is going to happen, and be open to those opportunities. And can I ask you one more question that I forgot to ask you that I want to know? What was it like when it was in April of this year, right? It was like you were the first female coach to actually be on the field, something like that, right?
Yep.
What was that like? Tell me all about it. Like, how did you feel? What was that experience like?
It was a very like emotionally charged situation because, just to like kind of like set the scene.
Yeah.
So during the games, I'm in the cage, like working with our hitters. Sometimes our pitcher will get down there just to stay warm, stay loose. So I'm not like in the dugout on the rail looking at like everything that's happening, right? We're like getting after it in the cage. So we were playing the Padres that game, and we had early on in the game, gone up by quite a few, 7, maybe 6 at least. One of our players stole a base, and it was the second inning, so there was already like some chirping from the other side, like, you shouldn't do that, you're up. And I have my own thoughts. That's a whole nother podcast on the unwritten rules. But anyway, so there was some tension there. And then it was just like kind of chirpy back and forth. And then right before the third inning got started, or it was like the bottom half of the third inning or something, I heard some yelling, where you just hear the noise, but you're not hearing the words. Yeah. And then I see our first base coach walking down the stairs, which like passed by the cage, and I'm like, uh-oh. And then our bench coach is like, Nak, you're going to coach first. And I was like, all right, cool. So side note, now I have a little like idea of what our pinch hitters go through when they go out and perform. So like adrenaline spike, and then it's like, okay, yeah, I'm good. So that was great, just to like build more connection with our players. But so then I just went out and I coached, and it was like, okay, I coach first during like spring training and get a lot of reps, and Antoine and I work very closely together. So it was like, okay, just got to step in, do the job. Yeah. There was definitely still some chirping going on just with the game. It was a very crazy in that sense type of a game. But again, I just felt grounded and in the moment and was just doing the job. And then, then I realized like, oh, right, this is probably going to be a big deal. And it was honestly like to the point about, having like a young girl be able to see that. Great, cool. That's really inspiring. But also it was like, okay, I was doing my job, and like, lastly, Antoine should not have been thrown out of the game. There was just a lot of controversy as to why he was thrown out. And had I known like that what he got thrown out for, like in the moment, I probably would have like not wanted to continue on that game because of what had gone on. Okay. However, I had no idea. So I'm like, okay, I'm out there. But then it was just, more attention, more of that. But it honestly just felt like in the moment I was like, fine. It's just like doing my job, stepping in. Like that's what an assistant coach does. They're kind of like the understudy. You kind of know how each job works. So, through COVID and coaches getting out because of COVID for a couple weeks, or coaches getting thrown out, like I step in and in there to help. So, it was a very interesting way to like go down in the history books for sure. I have a lot of like neutral feelings on it, because Antoine should not have been thrown out in the beginning.
Right. Oh, that's so interesting. I remember like that night, I can't remember if Jill like saw it on, I don't know where she saw it, but she's like, Nakken's coaching. And I was like, no way. And like, I think we tried to find it or something, but I don't think we actually saw you on TV. So. But anyways, that was cool. And I wanted to ask you that and I forgot. So I'm glad I got to ask you about it before we went off. So this has been such an awesome conversation. I feel like we hit so many awesome things related to your experience, but also just some awesome life advice for the girls and coaches and parents that are listening. So thank you for taking the time. I'm sure you get dozens of media requests every day. So so thank you for taking my request and hopping on this.
Anytime. Literally, like what you are doing is literally life-changing for people, because you're in it every single day with these young girls and these families, and like you're the constant that they're seeing. Like they see me maybe every once in a while on TV if they watch baseball, but like what you're doing is like truly impactful for those girls, but also for our future of humanity. So thank you. And it's quite an honor to be on this podcast.
Let me go grab my tissues or my taffy wrappers and wipe my tears. Love it. All right, Nak, thanks for coming on. Don't leave yet. I'm going to stop record, so don't leave yet. But yeah, guys, make sure you watch the San Francisco Giants, because Alyssa is on the staff, and show her your support there. And you're not really on social media, so
that's some other advice I'd give to young girls.
Like that's the thing. Like, you don't need that. You don't need it. But so don't go find her on social media. Go climb a tree instead after you listen to this podcast, or go try some surfing out. Yep. But thanks again for coming on, Nak, and thanks everyone for listening.
Much love.